How do you go from selling out in minutes to collecting dust on Walmart's clearance shelves in less than 3 years? Logan Paul, KSI, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. Four names from entirely different worlds: YouTube, boxing, and the highest tiers of football, yet all tangled in one of the fastest brand meltdowns of the decade. A drink that was supposed to rewrite the rules of the beverage industry ended up becoming a cautionary tale of how fast hype can turn to humiliation. Like and subscribe to Stars and Hypes for more, and let's continue. At launch, Prime wasn't just another sports drink, it was a cultural moment. Stores couldn't keep it in stock, limited edition bottles were being resold for insane markups. Schools were banning it because kids were smuggling it in like contraband. On social media, holding a bottle of Prime became a status symbol. It was Gatorade meets Gucci, liquid cloud in a colorful plastic bottle. And for a while, the dream looked unstoppable. Billions in projected value. Endorsements from some of the world's most recognizable athletes. Partnerships that made it feel like Prime was already in the same league as Coca-Cola. Logan Paul even hinted that this could be his ticket to becoming a billionaire before hitting 40. But fast forward to now, and that rocket ship is spiraling. Sales have cratered by over 90%. Lawsuits are stacking up in courtrooms from California to London. Retailers are quietly pulling stock, and the same celebrities who once posed with Prime bottles are suddenly nowhere to be seen. What went wrong? Was this just the natural end of an overhyped trend, or was Prime doomed from the moment the first bottle rolled off the production line? The answers aren't just about one drink. They expose the dark side of influencer empires, the fragility of fame-driven businesses, and why some of the loudest success stories can collapse faster than they rise. When Prime first hit shelves in early 2022, it didn't just launch, it detonated instantly. Within days, TikTok was flooded with videos of people hunting down bottles like rare treasure. Teens were racing to corner stores before the morning bell. Parents were posting in Facebook groups begging for restock tips, and resale markets were charging triple or more the retail price. Prime wasn't marketed like a drink. It was marketed like an event. Logan Paul and KSI weren't just co-founders, they were characters in a story people wanted to be part of. Every bottle felt like merchandise from your favorite show, and every public appearance, whether in a boxing ring, a YouTube vlog, or a football stadium, was another chapter in Prime's meteoric climb. They called it the Gatorade Killer, the next billion-dollar beverage brand. And for a while, it actually looked like that might be true. In the US, Canada, and the UK, stock vanished within hours of every release. Limited edition flavors sold out faster than concert tickets. In some schools, Prime bottles were more valuable than lunch money. One viral TikTok showed kids trading Prime like currency, 2 tropical punch for 1 Meta Moon, while others bragged about hoarding entire cases in their closets like sneaker collectors. Then came the heavy artillery. Prime inked a sponsorship deal with the UFC, plastering its logo in octagons around the world. Arsenal FC signed on. Elite athletes like Erling Haaland, Israel Adesanya, and Alex Volkanovski appeared with bottles in post-match interviews. Prime wasn't trying to sneak into the sports drink market. It was marching straight through the front gates with an army of influencers and sports icons. The brand's visibility became inescapable. Prime branded billboards at fight nights, social media blitzes every time a new flavor dropped. Bottles showing up in music videos, gaming streams, and even celebrity parties. It was everywhere, and it felt unstoppable. For Logan Paul, this was never just a side hustle. This was the crown jewel of his empire, the project he believed would cement him as not just an entertainer but a billionaire entrepreneur. He spoke openly about a potential $5 billion buyout from beverage giants like Pepsi or Coca-Cola. KSI echoed the vision. This wasn't about selling drinks, it was about rewriting the playbook for how a brand could dominate using pure internet star power. And for a moment, it seemed like they'd cracked the code. Prime wasn't just competing with Gatorade, it was winning. But behind the hype, early warning signs were starting to show. Small complaints, quiet criticism, whispers that maybe, just maybe, Prime wasn't built to last. And once those cracks began to spread, the fall would be faster and far uglier than anyone could have imagined. For most brands, a dip in hype is normal. For Prime, it was catastrophic. Barely 2 years after its explosive debut, the numbers started bleeding red, and the UK revenue collapsed by a jaw-dropping 70%, falling from 12.2 million to just 3.8 million in a single year. In the US, sales plunged by more than half in the first 6 months of 2024 alone. And globally, Prime lost an estimated 92% of its total revenue in under 2 years, making it one of the fastest consumer brand collapses in modern history. The worst part? This wasn't just a financial slump. It was a trust problem. Early buyers, many of them teens and young adults, weren't coming back for a second bottle. The drink that once caused stampedes in convenience stores was now being left untouched in fridges. Reviews began popping up all over social media, and they weren't flattering. Words like too sweet, artificial, and like swallowing perfume started trending in connection with Prime. One viral clip even showed a group of friends daring each other to finish a bottle, gagging halfway through. And when the hype wave crashed, Prime had nothing solid underneath to keep it afloat. Unlike long-standing competitors such as Gatorade or Body Armor, Prime had no deeply loyal customer base, no established retail footprint beyond the initial blitz, and most critically, no marketing plan outside of Logan Paul and KSI's personal reach. That influencer-driven approach had worked beautifully during the launch, but it came with a fatal flaw. Prime was only visible when Logan or KSI were talking about it. Outside of their social feeds, the brand simply didn't exist. No consistent billboard campaigns, no major TV spots, no constant presence at sporting events unless the founders were physically there. It became obvious Prime wasn't a self-sustaining product. It was a hype balloon, and once the air started leaking, the descent was rapid. And while a sales slump alone might have been survivable with the right strategy, Prime didn't get the breathing room to fix its problems. Because just as the numbers were falling, something far worse began closing in. A wave of lawsuits, not minor paperwork disputes, allegations serious enough to tarnish the brand's image permanently, and in some cases threaten its financial survival. If Prime's sales collapse was like a slow leak in a tire, the lawsuits were a blowout at 80 miles an hour. The first and most damaging hit came from Refresco, Prime's own beverage manufacturing partner. They filed a $67 million lawsuit accusing Prime of breaching a long-term supply agreement. The claim: Prime had promised to order a set minimum of product over 3 years, but backed out when sales started tanking without paying the penalties they'd agreed to. For any company, that's bad. For a brand already bleeding revenue, it's potentially lethal. Then came the ingredient scandals. Independent lab tests revealed that Prime Energy contained between 215 and 225 milligrams of caffeine, up to 25 milligrams more than the advertised 200 milligrams on the label. In the beverage industry, even small discrepancies like this can be considered false advertising, opening the door to a wave of consumer lawsuits. And they came, but the trouble didn't stop there. Another lawsuit alleged that Prime's nutrition labels were incomplete, failing to clearly disclose calorie counts, electrolyte levels, and actual health benefits. In an era where health-conscious buyers read every line on a bottle, hiding or omitting details was a direct hit to consumer trust. And then came the children. Multiple suits accused Prime of deliberately marketing its high-caffeine energy line to kids and teens. The packaging for Prime Energy looked almost identical to Prime Hydration, which contained no caffeine. Critics argued this wasn't an accident. It was a marketing strategy designed to cause confusion with potentially dangerous consequences for young consumers. Stories began circulating of kids unknowingly drinking the energy version, leading to jitteriness, headaches, and worse. As if that wasn't enough, a supplier named Arrogance filed a $13 million lawsuit claiming Prime hadn't paid for materials it ordered. Prime fired back, saying the materials were substandard, but to the outside world, the headlines painted a simpler picture. Prime was in cash flow trouble. And then there was the toxic chemical claim. A plaintiff alleged that Prime's grape-flavored drink contained PFS, a substance classified by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as hazardous with long-term exposure. Whether true or not, the accusation alone was enough to spook customers and fuel online outrage. Finally, in one of the strangest twists, the U.S. Olympic Committee sued Prime for releasing a Team USA edition featuring Kevin Durant, without permission to use the Olympic name or symbols. Prime ignored a cease and desist letter, got dragged to court, and quietly settled. The silence after the case spoke louder than any press release could. By now, Prime wasn't just a struggling drink brand, it was a magnet for legal trouble. And each lawsuit wasn't just draining money, it was eroding whatever brand trust still remained. But here's the thing about high-profile collapses. When the legal storm hits, the marketing department usually changes course, goes quiet, or rebuilds. Prime? They doubled down on arrogance, and it would only make things worse. The problem? That strategy only works if your product can back it up. Health experts began publicly calling out Prime's claims. One doctor bluntly said she would never recommend Prime to children, pointing out its high caffeine levels and questionable nutritional value. Nutritionists compared Prime's electrolyte content to its rivals and found the differences laughably small, sometimes just a single milligram separating it from the drinks it called inferior. Or still, Prime's visibility was shrinking outside of Logan and KSI's channels. No national TV campaigns, no constant billboard presence, no partnerships that could keep the brand in people's minds when the influencer hype cooled. The UFC deal and football sponsorships brought brief bursts of attention, but without consistent mainstream advertising, the momentum fizzled. And then there was the over-reliance on influencer marketing, a tool that can ignite a brand but rarely sustains it. Prime's social presence was almost entirely tied to Logan and KSI's own uploads. When they stopped posting about Prime for even a short stretch, sales noticeably dipped. Retailers began pulling back orders, and without shelf presence, the brand lost even more visibility. Instead of stabilizing, Prime seemed to double down on a strategy that only worked during its launch phase. The more Logan and KSI bragged, the more it highlighted the gap between their claims and the actual product experience. At this point, the lawsuits were still piling up, the sales graph looked like a ski slope, and the public image had shifted from trendsetter to tryhard. And the fatal flaw in Prime's business model was about to come into full view. Every brand makes mistakes, but Prime's biggest failure wasn't in its lawsuits, or even in its marketing missteps. It was in its DNA. From the very start, Prime wasn't built around a groundbreaking formula, unique health benefits, or an untapped market niche. It was built on two famous faces. Logan Paul and KSI weren't just endorsers, they were the product. The drink itself was secondary. If you stripped their names off the bottle, you were left with a brightly colored, artificially sweetened sports drink that could have come from any bargain bin. That's the fundamental difference between Prime and the competitors it bragged about killing. Body Armor spent 7 years building credibility before Coca-Cola bought in, using a network of athletes, sports teams, and grassroots campaigns to cement its place in the market. Gatorade has decades of research, endorsement deals, and a bulletproof brand identity rooted in sports performance. Even newer players like Liquid IV lead with a functional promise: hydration efficiency, clean ingredients, and a clear health narrative. Prime skipped all of that. It tried to fast track to the top on influencer firepower alone. And at first, it worked. Viral hype can launch a brand faster than any ad campaign. But fame is a fire that burns fast, and when it fades, your brand needs something real to keep it alive. Prime didn't have that. The signs came early. Retention rates tanked because first-time buyers weren't impressed enough to come back. Social media filled with taste complaints: too sweet, too artificial, too chemical. Once the novelty wore off, most people simply went back to the drinks they trusted. Stores' no shelf space shrank. Orders slowed. Without constant high-octane promotion from its founders, Prime simply couldn't sustain momentum. And the very personalities that fueled its launch became an anchor dragging it down. Logan Paul and KSI were polarizing from the beginning. For every die-hard fan willing to buy whatever they touched, there were skeptics, critics, and outright haters who wouldn't touch Prime out of principle. That's a problem when your entire business model depends on your personal brand. Worse, the arrogance that had worked as a marketing gimmick in the hype phase now looked out of place when Logan and KSI publicly attacked rival brands without strong, verifiable proof their own product was better. It didn't make them look confident. It made them look desperate. In the YouTube world, that kind of call-out fuels engagement. In the business world, it's a red flag for instability. By mid-2024, Prime's fate was no longer a question. It was a countdown. The lawsuits had drained resources, the sales decline had scared off potential investors, and its brand identity, so tightly welded to two polarizing influencers, made it toxic for any serious corporate buyout. This wasn't just a fall from grace. It was the inevitable collapse of a product that mistook viral hype for a business model, and internet fame for staying power. By late 2024, Prime's downfall wasn't a theory, it was a reality you could see on store shelves. Bottles that once sparked bidding wars online were now lined up in clearance aisles, slapped with discount stickers nobody seemed interested in peeling off. Retailers quietly cut orders, distributors moved on to faster-selling products. In some stores, Prime's colorful bottles were pushed to the bottom shelf, a silent emotion in the retail world that signals a brand's time is almost up. The financials told the same story. Globally, revenue had cratered by more than 90%. In the UK, profits collapsed from millions to mere thousands. The US market, the very stage where Prime had flexed its biggest wins, saw sales sliced in half in just 6 months, and with each quarter the losses deepened. Investors took notice, and not in a good way. Prime's original pitch had always been about the big exit, sell to a corporate giant like Coca-Cola or Pepsi for billions. But after the lawsuits, the sales collapse, and the fading influencer buzz, that dream was dead. No beverage conglomerate wanted to buy a brand that was both legally radioactive and financially unstable. Meanwhile, the lawsuits weren't just lingering, they were multiplying. Legal fees mounted, settlements chipped away at cash reserves. Suppliers and partners started treating Prime as a risk, demanding tighter payment terms or walking away entirely. Public perception shifted too. Prime went from being the it drink of 2022 to a punchline on social media. Memes mocked its taste, comment sections filled with people sharing stories about trying it once and never buying again. Even Logan Paul's and KSI's own posts about Prime started drawing more sarcasm than support. And here's the harsh truth. In business, momentum cuts both ways. When Prime was rising, every headline, every celebrity endorsement, every viral clip fueled the brand. But once the tide turned, the negativity snowballed just as quickly. Every new lawsuit confirmed the critics. Every sales report deepened the narrative of collapse. Every misstep made a comeback look less likely. By early 2025, Prime wasn't the Gatorade killer. It wasn't a disruptor. It wasn't even a serious player in the beverage market. It was a fading influencer side project with a warehouse full of unsold stock and a brand identity that had gone from aspirational to embarrassing. But the real lesson here isn't about a drink, it's about the danger of building a business on a spotlight that can turn off at any moment. Prime's story isn't just about a sports drink that lost its shine. It's about the rise and fall of a business built entirely on momentum, personality, and perception. On paper, the setup was flawless. Two internet powerhouses with global followings. A bold product launch that weaponized social media like no beverage brand ever had. Partnerships with some of the biggest sports organizations in the world, and a hype cycle so intense it made a plastic bottle feel like a collectible. For a while, it worked better than anyone could have imagined. Prime wasn't just a drink, it was a status symbol. Kids lined up for it. Athletes held it in post-game interviews. TikTok was flooded with videos of people hunting for rare flavors like they were chasing limited edition sneakers. It looked like the perfect blueprint for the future of marketing. But here's the thing about blueprints. You can't build a skyscraper on a cardboard foundation. Prime skipped the fundamentals that turn a trend into a legacy brand: slow, steady product refinement, genuine customer loyalty, consistent marketing beyond the founder's face. It was designed to win big now, not to survive the inevitable cooling off period that comes for every viral product. When the hype was loud, those flaws were invisible. But the moment the noise faded, Prime was exposed for what it really was. A drink that sold because of who made it, not what it was. And that's the most expensive business model in the world. Because fame has an expiration date. The lawsuits will be settled eventually. Some fans will stay loyal, and maybe Prime will limp along in discount bins for a few more years. But in the bigger picture, this collapse will be remembered as a warning to every influencer turned entrepreneur. Cloud can open doors, but if your product can't stand without you holding it up, the moment you step away, it all comes crashing down. The final question isn't whether Prime can make a comeback, it's whether it should, because sometimes a fall isn't a chapter in the comeback story. Sometimes it's the ending. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to Stars and Hype so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how things will continue in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care and have a great day.